Everybody, welcome into the Shelby County High School Football Show. We're out here at Shelby County High School, home to the Wildcats, as they're going to play host to the Jemison Panthers in a big rivalry matchup this Friday night. One of several big matchups taking place during the final week of region play as the season is winding down. Just 2 weeks left in the regular season before playoffs get here, and only 1 week of region play left. So a lot's going to happen this week. We'll touch on all of that throughout this week's show. The reason we are here at Shelby County High School, because the Wildcats, I think one of the most rewarding things that you can have happen in sports in general, any level of competition, is to never give up, never quit fighting, and that's what this Shelby County bunch has done this year, a group that started slow, struggled for the most part this season on both sides of the ball, and then last week, collectively as a team, able to overcome those struggles, pick up their first win as they hit the road and beat Central Tuscaloosa 28-14, a defense that was giving up more than 40 points per game this season and held Central to just 14 points, and the offense that's dealt with a lot of injuries and concerns on that side of the ball, they scored 28, win by 2 touchdowns as they pick up their first win of the season. Very rewarding, and they deserve some recognition for what they were able to do to pick up that big victory. Head coach Heath Childers, after the win, extremely excited for his group of guys and the way they fought through adversity so far this season. So a special win for them, and they'll look to duplicate that and pick up 2 in a row against Jemison. They have some confidence going into that, a big rivalry matchup there between those two teams, and it's homecoming week out here at Shelby County High School as well. So we'll break that game down, one of the big games taking place this week, but we also have several others. If you look across the county and look at several of these teams, the playoff picture is pretty much set for the most part. But there will be one team battling for a playoff spot. That's going to be the Vincent Yellow Jackets as they hit the road this week to take on Fayetteville. Winner of that game gets the 4 seed in their region. So the winner's on to the playoffs. The loser has just one more week to play in the regular season, and then they're done. So a big game between Vincent and Fayetteville. And then also looking across the landscape, if you look at Briarwood, they have a Thursday night game. That Vincent-Fayetteville game will also be on Thursday, moved up due to weather on Friday night. But Briarwood traveling to Fairfield on Thursday night. They win that game, they guarantee themselves home field advantage in the first round of the playoffs, a top 2 seed after their massive upset of number 2 Ramsey last week. At the same time, it could come down to a region championship the following week as they take on one of the best teams in 6A, Hewitt. So this week, if they win, they guarantee themselves home field advantage in the first round of the playoffs. If they can win that one and then win the next week, likely will win the region championship. So a big 2-week stretch for Briarwood, but it starts this Thursday. And then you also have the Montevallo Bulldogs. They'll be battling for home field advantage. If they can win this Friday night with a big road trip to Greensboro, they win that game, they also have the number 2 seed locked up in their region, and they will have home field advantage in the first round of the playoffs as well. Beyond that, this week we've got several big matchups, some rivalry matchups, some in-county battles, including Halina and Pelham, one of the biggest rivalry matchups in the state, in my opinion, and Halina has never beaten the Pelham Panthers, 0-3 against them all time. This year, that could change. We're going to break that game down extensively. That's going to be our game of the week. We are broadcasting here at Shelby County, so that's going to be a big game that we talk about as well. But our game of the week is going to be Halina taking on Pelham in a rivalry matchup that's really gained some steam over the last few weeks with the way that Pelham has played successfully. So we'll break that one down first. We'll jump in, talk about all of our games coming up this week, and also name a lengthy list of SCR Stars of the Week that came up big last week in region play at the end of the show. But we're going to jump in now, start with our game of the week between Halina and Pelham in a big rivalry matchup. So starting with that big rivalry matchup between Halina and Pelham, it's going to take place at Halina High School, and it obviously starts with the fact that the Huskies have never beaten the Panthers in school history. They've played the last 3 years, and Halina is 0-3 in those games. But this season has been a season of first in school history for the Halina Huskies. They've jumped into the top 10 rankings for the first time in school history, win their first region championship last week as they take down Jackson Olin. So their first region title, and if you think they're going to be let down off of that emotional high of winning that, and they're going to come out flat in this one, not thinking it means a lot, you're mistaken. This is a huge rivalry matchup between these two teams, and Halina knows they've never won this game. Pelham brags about it every year. That's their big thing. Their senior class every year, if they can beat beat Halina, that's what they really care about. And this year, Halina's got nothing, or Pelham's got nothing to lose. It's a team not going to the playoffs, and it's a good team not going to the playoffs. They struggled out of the gates this season, obviously, not winning a game through their first 6 games, an 0-6 start. But through the last 3 weeks, they've won 3 big games in a row, 3 games they should have won, and they've stepped up and they've won those games behind big performances from Xavier Langford at quarterback, as well as Gabe Gamble at the running back position. So this is a Pelham team that's getting better. Last week they edge out Northridge 14-13, and the good thing from that is you saw a strong defensive battle from this Pelham team, and that's been a big thing over the last several weeks. Their offense is obviously playing extremely well behind Gamble, behind Langford, but the defense has drastically improved. They've given up 21 or less in the last 4 weeks in a row, including 7 and 13 in the last 2 weeks. So this Pelham defense really is clicking, starting to play better, and you pair that with an offense that has found its form, is playing some great football behind those two in the backfield. This is a dangerous game for Halina. That said, the Huskies have played their best season in school history, arguably, and are still on a roll. I mean, this is a team that's obviously coming off that big win last week over Jackson Nolan, dominated that game throughout. The defense for Halina giving up just 19 points per game. The offense scoring closer, a little bit more than 30 points per game. So this is all around on both sides of the ball a very good Halina football team. You look at what they've got at quarterback and Luke Stamba, a guy that stepped up big time last week in that win against Jackson Nolan, and then you look what they have at running back in Marquise Johnson, who was close to 300 yards rushing 2 weeks in a row, and then this past week still went over 100 yards against Jackson Nolan. So a very good Halina offense, and if you look at that defense, that was going to be the highlight for them this year. They were going to come in, run the ball heavy at you, and then play defense. The defense started out a little bit slow against a tough schedule, but not that slow, and they've gotten better and better as the year has gone along. We'll talk about some of those defensive guys in our SCR Stars of the week at the end of the show. But this is a Halina team that's motivated, playing great football, and now have a chance to finish region play undefeated to continue the momentum of their season heading in to the postseason as well. So I think you're going to see a Pelham team that doesn't want to be that first team that loses to Halina in school history, but you're also going to see a Halina team that is very talented, very good, want to come in and make school history by picking up that first win. Whatever happens, it's sure to be one of the most exciting games this Friday night between these two rivals. I expect it to be a little bit closer than some might expect. I think Pelham's going to keep this a game for a long time because of the momentum and confidence they have going in. That's going to lend itself to a closer game for a while. At the end of the day, you think Halina should pull away just because of the talent and the season that they're having. But regardless, this is going to be a fantastic football game, and you can't ask for much more between two rivals that are on winning streaks right now, looking to end either their season on a positive note going into the final week of the regular season. Pelham doesn't have a game after this. This is it for them. They're going to lay it all on the line, looking for that confidence going into the offseason, looking to send the seniors off with a big win, while Halina's going to look for that confidence going into the postseason. So a thrilling rivalry is set up. I expect it to be that and much more when these two teams meet. So now we'll go down classification by classification, break down every game that we have taking place featuring a team from Shelby County this Friday night. A little bit hard-pressed for time this week, so I'm going to be a little bit quicker than usual and try to get you straight to the point and what I think is going to happen in each of these games. And we'll start in 7A. The Thompson Warriors, they've claimed their second region title in the last 3 years. Now they get a matchup with Hewitt Trussville on the road this Friday night, a game that was thrilling twice a season ago, one of which was on ESPN, a nationally televised game. So this is a matchup. Last year, the region championship, this game played a huge part in that. That's not the case this year. Hewitt Trussville has struggled to this point in the season. They've scored 24 or less in 5 of their last 16 games and 14 or less in that same stretch. So in those 6 games, they've scored 14 or less several times. So this is a Hewitt-Trussville offense that's struggling to get off the ground. The defense is better this year than it was last year, and it's probably the best it's been in a long time there for the Huskies. But this is the third tough defense in a row that Thompson has faced. You saw what they did against Vestavia Hills, putting up 35 against arguably the best 7A defense in the state. And then last week they put up 33 against Mountain Brook, who looked a little bit better defensively, in my opinion, than Vestavia a couple weeks ago. So Thompson's proven that test. Their offense still continues to roll, put up big numbers behind the amount of talented guys that we'll talk about more in our SCR Stars of the Week segment. But this Thompson offense, way too talented. The defense also playing some good football. They're giving up 19.3 points per game. Now, the key in this one, they've got to get off the field on third downs. That's what almost cost them against Mountain Brook. They really struggled at getting off the field on third down. But you know this team, no game after this going into the playoffs. They have a bye week, so they're going to come in. They're not going to have a letdown from winning that region championship last year. They're going to give it their all, knowing it's the final tune-up before going into the postseason. I expect Thompson to step up, put an emphasis on getting off the field on third down. Defense is going to play a better game, in my opinion. It's going to be too tough for Hewitt-Trussville to score points in this one, and especially score enough points to keep up with this Thompson offense that's just extremely talented and putting up crazy numbers each and every week. This is a game for the Oak Mountain Eagles. Had they won last week against Spain Park, this one would be for a spot in the playoffs against Vestavia Hills. Unfortunately, a week ago, as heartbreaking as it gets, they lose in double overtime, 35-28 to the Spain Park Jaguars, a big rival of theirs, and they were down to the 2-yard line looking to tie that game up in double overtime to keep the game going, and they were just unable to do so. Spain Park walks out with a 35-28 win, so Oak Mountain coming off a very difficult loss, and now they get a very physical and good Vestavia Hills defense. The Rebels, though, they're coming off a loss of their own, 35-28 to Hoover last week, a defense that's been dominant all season long, but the last 2 weeks, albeit against two of the best offenses in the state, Vestavia has given up 35 points in each of those games. So Oak Mountain's going to have some chances with the option attack that they run. Judah Tate, Evan Smith, and Jonathan Bennett all playing good football in the backfield there at Oak Mountain this season. They've had a tough physical season. They're not going to be shocked by the physicality of Vestavia, even though they are going to be one of the more physical defenses that the Eagles have faced. Oak Mountain's shown they can compete over the last several weeks with some good teams. I expect them to do so in this one. I think with the style that you see from Oak Mountain and Vestavia playing a defensive type of game where they want to run the football too, you're going to see a little bit of a lower scoring game between these two, which is going to keep Oak Mountain in it. They're going to have their chances to close out region play with a victory over the Rebels. That would be a crucial blow for Vestavia Hills going into the playoffs. But at the end of the day, this is going to be a tough one for Oak Mountain to overcome what they had happen last week. Try to get some momentum this week any way you can and pick up a win. I think it's going to be close. I think they'll have their chances, so we'll see how they finish this game off. But last week built up a strong lead against Spain Park, faltered off there late in the game, and then fall in double overtime. So we're going to need to see a more consistent effort for 4 quarters, and I think that Oak Mountain's going to come out hungry, ready to prove something, and it's going to be a tight game. So they'll have their chances to pick up a big win over Vestavia Hills. We don't need to spend too much time on this game. Spain Park should be able to run away in this one as they take on Tuscaloosa County, a team that is still winless so far on the 2019 season. We know the Jags are coming off that double overtime victory over Oak Mountain a week ago, a thrilling game between those two. They trailed 14-0 at the half, but then Harrison Barker and that offense really started clicking. Jalen Ward with 2 big touchdown catches there in that game in the second half, and that leads to the comeback victory. Cooper Kelly also with a couple of touchdowns, one in overtime. That was big as well. So Spain Park's offense has been dangerous all year. They now go up against a Tuscaloosa County team that's given up 44 or more points in 4 of their last 5 games. It's tough for me to see this Wildcats defense being able to step up and stop Spain Park, Harrison Barker and company on that offensive side of the football. The defense also at Spain Park has improved, and even though they've given up a lot of points in some games over the last few weeks, it's a unit that's played a good half each of the last couple weeks, in my opinion. Against Hoover, played a really good first half. Against Oak Mountain, a really good second half. So if they can put that complete game together this week defensively. I think Spain Park's going to pull away. I think it should be their best game on the defensive side of the ball this year, and the offense should easily roll and have their usual game where Barker puts up close to 400 yards passing and a few touchdowns. So I expect Spain Park to be able to pull away easily, close out region play with a big victory over Tuscaloosa County and a 2-game win streak nonetheless to close out region play to gain some confidence going into the final week of the regular season, but as well coming back next year during region play as well. So we'll see what Spain Park does, but I expect a big win from both sides of the ball there for the Jaguars this week against Tuscaloosa County. So our other two 6A teams that aren't taking place in our game of the week between Halina and Pelham, they're also playing each other. That's going to be the Chelsea Hornets and the Calera Eagles in another in-county battle, and both of these teams reeling right now, but for different reasons. If you look at Calera, they started the season with a win over the Pelham Panthers, so a strong start to the season with that in-county win, but then they fell in 7 straight games, or have fallen in 7 straight games now, heading into this matchup with Chelsea. Chelsea, on the other hand, they started out strong. They were in the running for a region championship going into a matchup with Halina 3 weeks ago, but since then they lost that one by 3 points, 31-28, and they've lost 2 more the last 2 weeks by 2 points or less. So 3 consecutive games that Chelsea has lost in heartbreaking fashion by 3 points or less. So it's a tough stretch for them, an emotional stretch for them, and they've got to figure out how to bounce back this week against Calera. It's a game that's not a region game. Chelsea is done with region play, but they've gone from from a possibility of the 1 seed in that region to now the 4 seed in that region. So they'll be hitting the road. They'll have a difficult matchup. It didn't matter. You're going to have a difficult matchup with coming out of this region anyways, having to match up with either Clay Chalkville, Pinson Valley, or Oxford or Gardendale. So that's a region where it was going to be difficult no matter what place you finish coming out of this region with Chelsea, Halina, Pelham, and so on. But the Hornets, nonetheless, I think this week a good opportunity to get some confidence back as they build toward the postseason against Calera. You look at Calera right now, it's a team that has struggled, like I said, lost 7 games in a row since winning their opener, and they've given up 40 or more points in the last 5 games in a row, including 54 last week in their 54-14 loss to Opelika. The key for Chelsea is going to be to start fast. This is a Chelsea team on the offensive side of the football. They've started a little bit slow the last few weeks against those 3 opponents that they've lost to. If they can get off to a faster start, they should be able to pull away with ease in this one. Collier Blair, still one of the most talented running backs there at Chelsea, one of the most talented running backs here in the county and across the state. Caleb Moore in the passing game has started to get going with guys like Ladarius Rice and Michael Gibbs stepping up. I think this is the game where they can step up, get some confidence back on the offensive side of the football, and more specifically and more importantly, in my opinion, the defensive side of the football. The first 4 games of the season for Chelsea, they gave up 17 points or less for playing some strong defense, but the last 4 they've given up 38, 31, 31, 27, and 37 in their last 4 games. So those were against tough opponents, but now they've got a chance against a team that they should be better than on that side of the ball, a Calera offense that's really struggled so far this season. I expect that you'll see Chelsea's defense get back to what we saw earlier in the season. I also expect you'll see the offense kind of get some momentum back after they've struggled over the last several weeks. So we'll see how both teams handle this matchup. A big opportunity for both to get some momentum heading into the final week of the regular season. But I just think Chelsea on both sides of the ball is going to be too much because of the way they play football. The struggles we've seen from Calera, at least Chelsea struggles. They've been in games, and they still are averaging more points on offense than they're giving up on defense. It's the complete opposite for Calera, who's just struggled on both sides of the ball. So I expect Chelsea to get that momentum back, pick up a big win in this county rivalry. So we've talked about how big this Briarwood matchup is on Thursday against Fairfield, a road trip coming off of a big victory over number 2 Ramsey. They have a short week to prepare now and get over that emotional and physical battle against the Rams. But what a performance that was all around from Briarwood, defensively, offensively, special teams. They gave up a kick return in that game, and it looked like Ramsey was going to win the special teams battle. But then you see Parker Hudson come through with a blocked kick, a blocked field goal attempt with from about 20 yards out with just very little time. The time was running out on that kick. And that would have won the game. Instead, Briarwood blocks it. Parker Hudson comes through wins the game. So they stepped up in all facets of the game. I said going in that was going to be key for them to get some turnovers. They did that. Said it was going to be key for them on special teams. They did that. And then also that offense to step up in the passing game, which freshman quarterback Christopher Vizina did. And now they have a chance this Thursday night against Fairfield to lock up home field advantage in the first round of the playoffs. All they need to do is win this football game against a Fairfield team that has been decent at times, but has also struggled throughout the season as well. They're coming off a 42-14 loss to Pleasant Grove last week. It's a Pleasant Grove team that is very talented, and they're also in the running in that three-way tie for first in this region right now with Ramsey and Briarwood. Lions have to win this one, though. I mean, it's just as simple as that. I feel very confident about them. They know what's ahead. It's a team that's just playing really good football, and even without Luke Pruitt last week, who's their best running back on the team, one of the best running backs in the state, they still come back and win that game without him the entire second half. So they were able to make big plays without him. I expect that to be key going into this matchup against a Fairfield defense that's given up 42 points in 2 of their last 3 games. They're only averaging 28.4 points per game on the defensive side that they're giving up. But the way they're playing right now versus the way Briarwood is playing right now, I think that's the key. This team has as much confidence as they've had the entire season right now. Vizina at quarterback, I think, is the biggest key because he was able to help lead the comeback last week. And Luke Rebels at running back now in place of Pruitt. He's also a guy that can step up and make big plays as well. So the way that they're playing defensively, on special teams, on offense, this is a team last week that proved they can compete for a state championship this year. So I think we're going to see Briarwood come out, show that in a big road matchup. They know what's on the line in this game. I think we'll see what they have, the full effort from every angle of the game and every aspect. I think that they pull away. They beat Fairfield pretty easily and claim home field advantage in the first round of the playoffs. So now we'll get into that game right here taking place at Shelby County as the Wildcats play host to Jemison in a big rivalry matchup. This one's been heated the last couple of years. I expect it to be the same this year. Now, you see a Shelby County team. This is homecoming for them, coming off their first win of the season over Central Tuscaloosa last week. This is a hungry bunch, a bunch that believes they can win football games now, and they've been close in some games earlier in the season, lost several games in tightly contested matchups and just couldn't make the plays late. Last week we saw the defense step up, give up just 14 points, and the offense take a step forward following an injury to starting quarterback Chase Holloman a few weeks ago. So this team, they're believing. They've collectively come together on both sides of the ball, and now they're taking on a Jemison team that's been struggling. They've lost 6 games in a row, Jemison has, since starting 2-0, so a team that's really reeling right now, while Shelby County has found some momentum and some confidence heading into this matchup. Last week, like I said, Shelby County entered the game giving up 40-plus points per game, and they had given up 40 in 6 straight and allowed just 14 points in that game. Now they're taking on a Jemison team, like I said, lost 6 in a row. They've scored a combined 25 points the last 4 weeks, and they've been held to 13 or less with 2 shutouts in that same span. So it's a team that struggled the last couple of weeks, not scoring very many points. They're going up against a defense that finally has something to build off of. You're going to see a confident defense out there, which makes all the difference in the world. And the Jemison defense not playing very well this season either. They're giving up 36.8 points per game. So Shelby County's confidence, homecoming night, I just believe in them right now. Head coach Heath Childers, he's been along for the ride this year, really has kept these guys believing, and they have finally seen that success. That's big. That's something that can carry over into this game. I expect Shelby County to have a strong opportunity to make it 2 wins in a row with a homecoming victory this Friday night over a big-time rival in Jemison. It's going to be a lot of fun out here in Columbiana between these two teams, and I think we're going to see an exciting atmosphere, an exciting game as Shelby County looks for 2 in a row. Just 3 more games to touch on this week before we jump into our SCR Stars of the Week, and it starts with the Montevallo Bulldogs and a road trip to Greensboro. And boy, did the Bulldogs flip a switch last week, coming off a 14-12 loss the week before to Sumter Central, a game where they had some misfortunes, an injury to the starting quarterback Malik and Manette. They bounced back in a big way last week against Sipsey Valley with a 56-0 win. So the offense, they were healthy. They showed their dominance and what they can do when they are healthy. Between Deion Gilliland, between Enna Bennett, between J.J. Evans, Jamarius Carter, and several other guys, they all stepped up, had big games in that win. And defensively, for the second week in a row, this is the big key. The offense, we know what we're going to get. They're one of the most talented offenses in the state when they're healthy. Defensively, we saw a Montevallo team give up or shut out Sipsey Valley last week, a team that was giving up close to 50 points per game at one point this season. Now the last 2 weeks have given up 14 combined, 14 against Sumter Central in a 14-12 loss, and then 0 this past week in that 56-0 win. Now this week, another big opportunity to pick up a big win against Greensboro, a team coming off a 55-6 loss to American Christian, and they sit at 1-7 on the season. This is a team that scored 8 points or less in 5 of their 6 games this year. It's just hard for me to find any way that this game is close unless Montevallo loses focus. But they know what's ahead. They're in the playoffs regardless. They win this game, they get the 2 seed out of the region. They get home field advantage, which is a big deal for them. They know that. They won it in that first round of the playoffs. They lose, they fall to possibly the 4 and maybe even the 4th seed in this region. So they're either going to be a 3 or a 4 seed in this region if they lose this game, the possibility of falling all the way down to a 4 seed. So winning it, the only way that they get home field advantage, they need to do that. I expect them to come out. They're healthy now. I think you're going to see an offense that's playing well, continue to get back on track after last week's showing, and a defense that's really stepped up the last 2 weeks. They need to have a big showing in this one again. That side of the ball is really gaining some confidence, and they need to continue to do so moving into the playoffs. If that can happen, if this defense plays well and this offense can continue to stay healthy and as dangerous as they are, this is a very scary football team moving into the playoffs. But they need this one, and they need home field advantage, so a big game at Greensboro on Friday. Quite possibly the biggest game that we'll have this Thursday night, really this week entirely. That's going to be Vincent traveling to Fayetteville on Thursday. A big game. Winner goes to the playoffs, loser does not. So it's a winner-take-all in this one for the Vincent Yellow Jackets. They have got to win this football game to make the postseason for the second consecutive year. A team that's been inconsistent. We don't know what we're going to get from this Vincent team. They've struggled at times. They've played really well at times. They won 2 in a row in 2 of their last 3 games. But then last week, and we expected this, a tough game against number 3 Reeltown. They fall 42-6. That's a Reeltown team that can win a 2A state championship. So Vincent can't let that get their confidence down. They need to come into this game thinking they can win, knowing they can win against a team that's really even on paper with Vincent. Both of these teams, Fayetteville and Vincent, very similar, almost the identical team, very similar on paper, very similar on the field. So it's going to be a tight battle. I think one team's going to pull away at some point, win by a couple of scores. So Vincent needs to get off to a fast start. They really need Tay McGregor to step up in this game. He's been the difference in the games that they've won. Those 2 games in a row, he had close to a combined 10 touchdowns in those 2 games. He's going to have to be a big difference maker in special teams, on defense, and on offense if Vincent wants to win this game and make it to the playoffs. Fayetteville, they come in with a little bit more confidence because they come in off a win 27-0 over Horseshoe Bend, but the same team that Vincent beat 43-24 a couple of weeks ago. So both those teams handled that team in Horseshoe Bend fairly easily. Like I said, they're very similar on paper. Tay McGregor can get some big plays early, and then JT Youngblood, the big running back there, if he can step up and churn some big yards out, keep the clock rolling, Vincent's going to have a strong chance. But this one's going to go down to the wire. It's going to be an intense game for them on the road. Vincent's going to have to step up and believe going into the game with a great attitude, and then continue to believe throughout that they can pick up the win. It's going to be a thrilling one, though, and a sure-tested battle to see who comes out and who makes it to the playoffs. And we'll see if the Vincent Yellow Jackets are doing that at the end of the night on Friday. The final game we have taking place this Friday night, that's going to be the Cornerstone Chargers taking on Meadowview. They'll hit the road to take on Meadowview. And Cornerstone 2 weeks ago, they pick up their first win of the season, 28-20 against Southern Prep Academy. And despite coming off of a difficult 59-0 loss to Southern Academy this past Friday night, this is a game against Meadowview that Cornerstone should win. It should be their second win of the season as they take on a Meadowview team that is really struggling right now. They're coming off a 42-0 loss of their own against Chambers, and they've been shut out in 5 of 8 games this year and have scored 8 points or less in 7 of 8 games this year. So a Meadowview team that just doesn't have any sort of offense going into this matchup. They've lost to a couple of 8-man teams in Evangel and Ezekiel Academy. So Cornerstone's better than this team. They need to step up. They need to prove that and show it, get some confidence, pick up that second win of the season. I expect them to do so really in dominant fashion. I expect Cornerstone to have one of their best games of the season, pick up a dominant victory against Meadowview. It's time to name our SCR Stars of the Week, and man, I've got almost a sheet and a half of names to name off this week after stellar performances in what was possibly the most exciting night of high school football Shelby County has seen in the last several years. We had several one-possession games, that double overtime game between Spain Park and Oak Mountain, Thompson winning a thriller to claim their second region championship in 3 years, as well as the Halina Huskies claiming their first region championship in school history. So a lot of great games, a lot of big happenings for several teams, and it's all because of the players on this sheet of paper right here that stepped up and made big plays, as well as the other players on the team as well. I mean, I saw a lot of unit performances that were outstanding this past Friday night, but we'll go through, we'll name each of our SCR Stars of the week. We'll start in the 7A classification, roll down through each of the others that we had SCR Stars in, and it's going to start at Spain Park High School with Harrison Barker, who has just been outstanding on the offensive side of the ball all year long. A big performance from him in that double overtime win against the Eagles, 35-28. He was 26 of 33 for 337 yards and 4 touchdowns in that win. A big second half for him, and a big reason why was his lead receiver in Jalen Ward, who had 9 receptions for 190 yards and 2 touchdowns. 2 of those touchdowns for 50 yards or more. So a very strong performance from Jalen Ward in that game with his 190 yards and 2 touchdowns. Those two played a huge part in the win. So did the defense. They stepped up, had one of their best games of the season, but particularly there on that goal line stand at the end. They stop Oak Mountain on the 2-yard line, preserve the win 35-28. So a big game all around from Spain Park on both sides of the ball in that victory against Oak Mountain. Thompson Warriors, they also had a strong showing this past Friday, winning their second region championship in 3 years, and there's several guys to name off as reasons why they were able to pick up that win. And we'll start with Javon Williams, the cornerback there, the defensive back at Thompson. He made a stellar play for the pick six that really put that game away there in the final minutes. A one-possession game, and he steps in front of a trick play, it looked like. He was reading toward the middle of the field, saw the quarterback's eyes, backed up, turned around, ran the other way, jumped in front of the pass. The guy was wide open. He wasn't anywhere near the play, and all of a sudden he read it, sped over, jumped in front of the pass, and took it all the way to the house for close to 60 yards and a touchdown to put that one away, 33-21. So a big pick six from him to help seal the win there for the Thompson Warriors. And then you also look at the offensive side of the football. A couple more defensive players, though, or one more defensive player. Jeremiah Alexander stepped up, had a big game with 2 sacks in that contest. And this was a team in Thompson that struggled to get off the field on 3rd down. But Alexander, he stepped up, made a couple of big plays to push Mountain Brook backwards in that game. So a strong performance from him as well. But the offensive side, we saw several guys step up. And Sawyer Pate, we'll start with him. The quarterback's had a stellar season there for the Warriors. Very efficient. He did throw an interception in this game. Not really his fault. It was a ball that was batted down. But nonetheless, it was a stellar game aside from that interception. He ended up going 17-24 for 240 yards with 2 touchdowns in that game against a very, very good defense in Mountain Brook, one of the best defenses in the state. And he had a very solid performance. A big reason why were the role players that he had around him at receiver. J.B. Mitchell and Sam Reynolds both had big games for Thompson on Friday night. Sam Reynolds, 6 receptions, 92 yards, and J.B. Mitchell, 5 receptions for 87 yards and a touchdown. Both were able to get Thompson's drives going on short passes, and then they were able to make some big plays near the end zone as well. So those 2 receivers really stepped up. They're speedy guys. They're athletic guys. They can make plays, and they did so. At running back, so did JoJo Gators. He had 13 carries, 104 yards, and 2 touchdowns for the Warriors. And as they get Jarrett Crockett back and in full health moving forward, this is a very dangerous offense, not because just of what they have at receiver and quarterback, but because of the combination they have at running back, which is arguably the best, almost a trio in the state when you throw in Jarrett Crockett, JoJo Gators, and Brandon Franklin. So a very dangerous Thompson offense. The Halina Huskies, they also have a very dangerous offense. It's shown the last several weeks, and it showed big time against Jackson Nolan as they blew them out to claim their first region championship in school history. And Luke Stamba, one of the main reasons for that, he was 11-16, 215 yards and 3 touchdowns through the air, and then also added 50 yards rushing and a touchdown on the ground. So a strong performance from him as he went for close to 300 yards all-purpose in that win over Jackson Nolan. And Marquise Johnson, he continues to step up at running back, had close to 300 yards in back-to-back weeks, and then this past week against Jackson Nolan ran for 116 yards on 16 carries with a touchdown. He continues to just churn out big carries and go over 100 yards in almost every game for Halina. He'll be big, and his health especially moving into the playoffs. If he stays healthy, if Stamba stays healthy, this is a dangerous Halina football team despite having a tough matchup in the first round of the postseason. Offensively as well, Tony Ruiz, former Kingwood player, now at Halina, he had 6 catches for 86 yards and a touchdown for Halina in that win. On the defensive side of the ball, Nathan Dunaway has just been outstanding this year. He had 11 tackles on the defensive side for the Huskies. So a strong showing from Halina in that game. Also in 6A, the Pelham Panthers, they won their 3rd game in a row. Xavier Langford and Gabe Gamble continue to play some good football. Langford 10-14 for 90 yards, 27 rushing yards, as well as he goes over 100 all-purpose in a defensive battle. He stepped up and was a leader, was efficient, made good calls, was very smart in that win for the Huskies by 1 point, 14-13 over Northridge. And Gabe Gamble, who's come close to 200 yards the last 3-4 weeks in a row, he was right around 100 yards this week, had 92 on 18 carries, but also had the only 2 touchdowns for Pelham in that game. Defensively, this was the key for Pelham in that game. They've struggled on the defensive side of the football at times this year, starting to play well, and a big reason why Braden Marlowe, Matthew Plummer, and Zach Rushton, all those guys had 8 or more tackles. Marlowe led the way with 10. Plummer and Rushton both had 8 in that game. So strong defensive showing from Pelham and from those 3 guys. They have been leaned upon on the defensive side and really have helped the rest of the defense come along. I expect that to be the case again in a very physical, strong defensive battle this Friday night against Halina. Moving on to the 5A classification, a few guys to name at Briarwood, and rightfully so after they picked up a huge upset against number 2 Ramsey, a big victory against the Rams as they kept their hopes at a region title alive. Christopher Vizina, the quarterback there, I can't say this enough how important he was to come through for Briarwood. He did throw 2 interceptions, but he went 13-22 for 189 yards and a touchdown. He's just a freshman going up against arguably the best defense in the state, and Ramsey, they were giving up less than 15 points per game going into that matchup. So they were going to have to throw the ball if they wanted to beat the Rams in that matchup, and Vizina stepped up as a freshman, and the big play, the game-winning touchdown that put them up 21-20, he stepped in to a big hit and threw the ball perfectly for a touchdown. So he had a huge game and was really the big difference maker for Briarwood in that win. Also saw Luke Rebels step up in place of Luke Pruitt, who got injured in the first half. Rebels went for 82 yards on 16 carries. And then a couple of defensive guys that also stepped up. We saw Cal Higdon. He had 2 interceptions in that game, so a strong performance for him. And then Parker Hudson as well, a guy that's been playing some great football this year. He stepped up. He read the game-winning kick from Ramsey. He read it perfectly. He snuck around. There were several guys in the backfield there for Briarwood, but he stepped up, leapt up in the air. The ball hits him, and he blocks the field goal to preserve the win for Briarwood 21-20 and pick up the upset against the Rams. So the final guys that we have to mention, they're going to be at Montevallo in the 4A classification, and the big guys stepped up again. The offense came through. We saw what Malik and Bennett did, 15-27, 273 yards and 4 touchdowns passing, a lot of which came in the first half of that game. And he loved to target Jamarius Carter, the tall receiver there at Montevallo. He had 7 catches for 195 yards and 2 touchdowns for Montevallo. So the attention coming into the year was on J.J. Evans, rightfully so, the second all-time leader in season receiving yards. And he did that a year ago at Montevallo. So a lot of focus on Evans, but Carter came back and he played a lot last year late in the season. He stepped up this year, and he's been a big difference maker in this team's success. I expect that to continue, and if you forget about Evans, then he's going to easily go for over 100 yards every game as well. Outside of that, Evans ended up with 4 catches for 58 yards and 2 touchdowns in that game as well. But outside of that, Deion Gilliland, 14 carries. He had 132 yards and 3 touchdowns for Montevallo in that win. And on the defensive side of the football, we've seen what they've done the last couple of weeks defensively. This is a Montevallo defense that stepped up, and they've made some big plays, holding the last 2 opponents to 14 or less. A shutout this past week, and a big reason why. 6 total sacks. Javion C. had 9 tackles and 2 sacks. Jamari Harris and Justin Tyus each with an interception, and Cameron Goins and Xavier Bryant each with a fumble recovery. So strong defensive performance to pair with that offense. That's dangerous if you're going up against Montevallo moving forward. And if they can keep that going into the playoffs, they instantly become a favorite to move on and have some success in a deep postseason run as well. That's going to do it for this week's Shelby County High School Football Show out here at Shelby County High School. Make sure you get out, catch one of the exciting games that we have coming up this Friday night. A big one here at Shelby County as they host Jemison on homecoming in a big rivalry matchup. Several other big games, too, as we mentioned. Halina, Pelham in a rivalry matchup, in-county game between Chelsea and Calera. That's where I'll be on Friday night. From a geographic standpoint, that makes the most sense for coverage, so we can give you the best coverage possible. So we'll have our Facebook Live pregame show from Chelsea High School on Friday night ahead of their big game with Calera. We'll break down everything that's coming up on a full slate of region action, the final week of region play. Some of those teams battling for playoff spots, for seeding. We'll break it all down ahead of a busy Friday night and get you ready for what to expect from all of the games. That's going to do it from here at Shelby County. We'll see you guys on Friday night. Hope you enjoy your week and are excited for another big week of high school football in Shelby County.